It started with a voicemail. I remember it so clearly because I was sitting in my car outside my apartment, engine off, grocery bags sweating on the passenger seat, and this tight, familiar knot building in my chest the second I saw Mom flashing on my screen. I hadn't heard from her in over 3 months. Not since the last blowout when I told them I couldn't keep paying for Eric's car insurance or help with the roof repair or send another quick $500 just to float them through the month. That silence had been blissful. But then she left that message. Jake, call us back. We need to talk about something. And your father isn't doing well. It was the same tired melody, but this time something about her tone was different. Not panicked, not dramatic. Flat. Final, like they'd already made a decision and I was just being informed of it as a formality. Against my better judgment, I called back. Dad picked up. No hello, no warmth. Just, we've made some changes. To the will. That was the moment my mind stopped. The rest of the conversation blurred into static, him muttering about practicality, keeping things simple, Eric being local, and you're busy with your life anyway. I barely remember what I said. Probably something like, okay, got it, and then an excuse to get off the phone. I sat there in the driver's seat long after the call ended, the groceries slowly wilting beside me, staring through the windshield like the world had tilted just slightly on its axis. Because deep down, I already knew what they were saying without saying it. I'd been written out. And just like that, the years I'd spent helping them, bailing them out, lending money, paying their bills, watching Eric spiral into failure after failure and still being expected to carry him on my back meant nothing. They hadn't even asked. They hadn't even told me to my face. They just erased me. Like crossing out a name on a list. For days after that call, I tried to push it aside. Tried to pretend it didn't bother me. I poured myself into work, told myself I was being dramatic. That I was overthinking it. But it gnawed at me. Not the money god, no. I didn't care about inheritance. I was doing fine on my own. Better than fine. It was what it meant. That I was no longer considered family enough to be included in their future. That they didn't even see the need to discuss it with me after everything I had done for them. And worst of all, that Eric, my younger brother who had never held down a job for more than 6 months, who still lived at home and treated our parents like an endless safety net, was the one they entrusted everything to. So one night, about a week later, I made a decision. I told them I'd be visiting for the weekend. Not because I missed them. Not because I forgave them. But because something about that call didn't sit right with me. Something about the way Dad had said keeping things simple felt like code for something more. Something they didn't want me to know. The house looked exactly the same. The cracked stone steps. The faded red shutters. The lopsided bird feeder Dad swore he'd fix 5 years ago. But as I pulled into the driveway, suitcase in the trunk and nerves tight in my gut, something felt off. It wasn't just the quiet. It was the kind of silence that waits, not absence, but tension. Like the house had been holding its breath since the phone call. The front door creaked open before I knocked. Eric. He stood there barefoot in a wrinkled t-shirt that looked like it hadn't seen detergent in weeks. A mug in his hand, half asleep at 2 in the afternoon. His eyes scanned me top to bottom and then came the smirk. That same smug, effortless smirk I'd grown to hate. Look who decided to show up. No hug. No hey man. Just that. I stepped inside, trying to ignore the smell, something between burnt toast and stale beer. The living room was cluttered. Mail stacked high on the table, takeout boxes on the floor. Mom would have never let it get this bad before. But now? It looked like no one even cared. Mom appeared from the hallway, her face tight with what I thought might be guilt or maybe annoyance. She gave me a quick side hug like I was someone else's kid. Jake, you didn't have to come all this way. You left a message. About Dad. She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, he's fine. He was just tired. Blood pressure was up, that's all. Doctor adjusted his meds. Right? So that whole he's not doing well thing? Just bait. That first evening passed in a blur of stiff conversations and long pauses. We ate dinner together, if you could call microwaved meatloaf and soggy vegetables dinner. No one mentioned the will. No one talked about why I was really there. Instead, they made small talk. Eric went on about a new business idea involving crypto and lawn care equipment rentals. Mom tried to pull me into a conversation about my cousin's baby shower. Dad just sat there in his recliner, not looking at me, pretending to nap. It was like they were stalling. Or worse, testing me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, blades groaning like the house was trying to speak. The room hadn't changed since college, trophies I didn't care about, posters I outgrew, the same creaky desk where I once filled out FAFSA forms while Eric smoked out his window and skipped class. I kept thinking about that call. We've made some changes. Keeping things simple. Why now? Around midnight, I padded down the hallway, past Eric's door, cracked open, his loud breathing echoing out, and toward the kitchen. I wasn't even thirsty. I just needed space. Clarity. That's when I noticed it. The office door. Closed. Locked. We never locked that room growing up. It held Dad's files, bills, paperwork, the boring stuff. But now? Now it had a digital keypad installed on it. Why did they need to lock the office? And more importantly, what were they locking me out of? The next morning, I played it cool. I asked about the office casually over breakfast, like I hadn't been standing there at midnight pressing lightly on the handle. New lock on the office? Mom didn't even blink. Oh, that. Your father thought it was safer. You know, with identity theft and everything going around. Identity theft? I raised an eyebrow. Well, you know, she said quickly. Documents, insurance papers, things like that. Dad kept chewing toast like he hadn't heard a word. Eric scrolled his phone. The answers were rehearsed. Fast. Too easy. Something was in that office. Something they didn't want me to see. Later that day, while Mom and Dad were out running errands, I took my chance. Eric was still home, lounging on the couch, binge-watching some true crime documentary about inheritance fraud of all things. I slipped upstairs under the guise of grabbing a sweatshirt and tiptoed down the hallway to the office again. I stared at the keypad. It blinked back at me, unbothered. I didn't have the code, but I did have the memory. My dad used the same password for everything for years, our old landline number. I punched it in. Nothing. I tried his birthday. Error. Then I remembered something else. Years ago, when Eric had been in trouble with the bank for overdraft fees, Dad had changed the safe combo to Eric's birthday so he'd remember it better. I typed it in. Beep. Click. The lock disengaged. I opened the door, heartbeat loud in my ears. The room was dark, dust dancing in the streak of sunlight from the blinds. Everything looked normal at first glance, filing cabinet, printer, folders, ledgers. But on the desk sat a manila envelope with my name on it, just my name. In Dad's handwriting. I reached for it. What the hell do you think you're doing? I spun around. Eric. Standing in the doorway. Face hard. Eyes narrowed. And in his hand was Dad's baseball bat. Eric didn't say another word at first. He just stood there with that bat resting casually over one shoulder like we were kids again and he'd caught me in his room stealing his Game Boy. But this wasn't a game. Put that back, he said finally. His voice was low but sharp enough to slice clean through the air between us. I didn't move. What is this? Eric? I asked, holding up the envelope. Why does Dad have something locked in here with my name on it dash? His grip on the bat tightened. It's none of your business. I almost laughed. You're telling me in Dad's office that something with my name on it isn't my business? He took a step forward. I held my ground. This wasn't the Eric who used to hide behind me when Dad raised his voice. This was someone else. Someone sharper, angrier, like he'd been feeding off bitterness for years and finally decided he was hungry enough to snap. We stood there in that weird standoff for what felt like an hour. Finally, I made the choice. I tore the envelope open. Eric didn't stop me. He just stood there, jaw clenched, waiting. Inside was a short letter in Dad's handwriting and several official-looking documents clipped together. The letter was dated almost a year ago. My eyes scanned the first lines. Jake? I know this will hurt, but you need to know the truth before it's too late. My stomach dropped. The next few lines didn't make sense at first, talk of accounts, property deeds, redirection of assets, and something about a trust. My eyes flew over the legalese, trying to piece it together, but one phrase stood out like it was screaming at me. All financial holdings transferred to Eric's name. What? I flipped to the next page. It was a notarized document. Then another. The bank account I helped set up for my parents 5 years ago, the one I'd been quietly depositing into to cover their bills, was now fully under Eric's name. So was the deed to the house. So was the life insurance policy. Everything I had quietly funded, everything I had thought I was doing to keep the family afloat, had been signed away to Eric. Behind my back. I looked up at him. You knew about this. Eric's expression didn't change. Of course I knew. It was my idea dash dot. I stared at him, stunned. You stole from them. From me, dash. No, he snapped. I protected them. You think just because you make some money now you get to call the shots? Come in here with your polished shoes and smug look like you're better than us? They needed that money, Jake. They were drowning before I stepped in. You stepped in. I said, my voice shaking now. Eric, you haven't worked a day in your life. I've been paying for everything from taxes to their groceries to the repairs on the roof you said you'd handle. And you, what? You convinced them to sign everything over to you. I didn't have to convince them, he sneered. They did it willingly. You think they ever really trusted you? You left, Jake. You went off and made your shiny little life. But I stayed. I shook my head. You stayed because you had to. Because you've never made it on your own. He stepped closer, the bat now hanging at his side but still tight in his grip. Keep pushing, Jake. Just keep pushing. That was the moment I realized how dangerous this all was. It wasn't just about money. This wasn't petty sibling rivalry. It was calculated. Systematic. They'd been making moves behind the scenes for months, maybe even years. I'd been the fool wiring money and showing up like some savior, not realizing I was just funding my own erasure. They played you, Eric said, eyes gleaming. Just like they always played everyone else. But they finally got smart. They listened to me, Dash. I felt like the walls of the house were closing in. I had to get out. Had to think. Without saying another word, I stuffed the documents back in the envelope, pushed past him, and walked straight out the front door. The air outside was cold and wet. It had started to drizzle, just enough to soak your collar and make your skin crawl. I got in the car and sat there gripping the wheel, the envelope on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please don't stir things up. We just want peace. Peace. They wanted peace after siphoning everything I'd built and handing it to a man-child with a baseball bat and a god complex? No. This wasn't over. I drove to a nearby motel, needing space, physical and emotional. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread the papers out on the motel bed, reading line by line. The more I read, the more sick I felt. The timeline told me everything. The moment I had transferred my name off the house to help them with refinancing, Eric had swooped in with a lawyer and a sob story. The minute I started covering their debts, they made him executor of Dad's trust. They didn't just forget me, they replaced me. But the final twist came tucked at the bottom of the envelope. A printout of an email chain between Eric and someone named Brenda Carlisle. Subject line, clean up the paper trail. I stared at it for a long time. Then I remembered Brenda Carlisle was an attorney. One I had hired years ago to help Mom and Dad refinance the house safely. What was she doing working with Eric now? And what exactly did they mean by cleaning up the paper trail? I picked up my phone and started dialing. If they thought I was going to walk away quietly, they didn't know me at all. The motel room was quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioner. My fingers hovered over the phone, hesitation creeping in. Brenda Carlisle. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since the refinancing deal had gone sideways. But the email was clear. Brenda wasn't just some innocent bystander. She was in on whatever Eric was doing. She'd been quietly working against me. I dialed her number. The line rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Brenda Carlisle speaking. My throat was tight. I forced myself to speak clearly. Brenda, this is Jake Reed. A pause. Mr. Reed, how can I help you? I swallowed hard. I found some emails between you and Eric about cleaning up a paper trail. What exactly does that mean? There was a faint pause on her end. Then carefully, Jake, I'm surprised you even remember me. Look, I'm not going to lie. Things got complicated with your family's finances. Eric came to me for help. Help? I echoed. Or cover up? Her voice hardened. You don't understand the full story. Your parents, they were drowning in debt and didn't want to tell you. Eric stepped in to protect them, to stabilize things. The refinancing, the transfer of assets, it was all done legally. Legally? I scoffed. By pushing me out? By locking me out of the accounts I funded? Is that protection? Brenda sighed. It was messy, Jake. I know you feel betrayed. But Eric was trying to save the family business from collapse. I bit my lip, trying to process it. Could this be true? Or just another lie from the people who had erased me? Where were you when I was footing the bills? Paying their taxes? Why didn't you say anything when Dad signed that trust over to Eric? Why the emails about cleaning up the paper trail? Another long silence. Then Brenda said quietly, almost reluctantly, because there was something more. Something no one was supposed to know. What do you mean? I pressed. Your father was involved in something. Something that could ruin the entire family if it ever came out. My heart raced. What? What are you talking about? Jake, this isn't just about money or property. There are other things at play. Things that could explain why your family acted the way they did. Tell me. Brenda hesitated. Then, your father was being investigated for fraud, embezzlement. He was trying to cover it up, but the evidence was piling up. I sat back, stunned. Dad? No, that can't be. I have the documents. Bank records, emails, transfers. Eric knew. He wanted to protect you, but also make sure the family didn't lose everything. I swallowed hard, trying to let it sink in. If Dad was under investigation, then maybe the money I sent wasn't just to help with bills. Maybe it was to cover something worse. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't Dad tell me? Because he didn't want to drag you into it, and because Eric was handling it. But Eric knew things were spiraling. I was silent, overwhelmed. Then Brenda added, almost softly, I'm sorry, Jake. I wish I could have been honest from the start. But if this gets out, your whole family could be destroyed. I ended the call and sat there, the room feeling smaller than ever. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. Dad's trust was broken. Eric's protection felt like manipulation. And now a secret investigation I never saw coming. I looked at the envelope again. Maybe it wasn't just about who had the money. Maybe it was about hiding something much darker. I decided I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not Eric. Not Mom or Dad. Not even Brenda. I needed answers. So the next day I went to the courthouse. I requested public records. And that's when I found the lawsuit. A federal investigation. And a secret subpoena against my father. The case file was redacted, but the charges fraud, money laundering were clear. I stood there in the courthouse lobby, gripping the folder tight. If this was true, if Dad was involved in something illegal all along, then the entire family was tangled in a web of lies, and I was the only one who didn't know. I was the outsider, the scapegoat, the one they hid everything from. But what scared me the most was this. Eric knew Dash, and he used it. The sunlight was barely breaking through the dusty blinds when I found myself standing outside Eric's apartment door. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding loud enough to drown out everything else. I hadn't seen him in months, not since I'd blocked him everywhere. But today I needed answers. I needed to hear from him. No more lawyers, no more whispers, no more cryptic messages from Brenda. I raised my fist and knocked sharply. The door opened slowly, and there he was, Eric. Same smug grin, same disheveled hair, like nothing had changed, like I wasn't the brother he'd pushed aside for years. Jake, didn't expect to see you. His voice was casual but icy. Like he was daring me to bring this confrontation. I didn't say a word. I stepped inside, the stale smell of old takeout and cheap beer filling the air. What do you want? Eric asked, folding his arms. Answers. I pulled out the courthouse file, the thick folder heavy in my hands. You knew. You knew about Dad's investigation. About the fraud charges. And you kept it from me. Eric sighed, like this was a conversation he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. It wasn't that simple, Jake. You don't understand what Dad was involved in. He was desperate. Desperate enough to drag the whole family down. Desperate enough to hide it from me? To lock me out of the trust? To treat me like I was nothing? Eric's eyes hardened. Look, you were never the favorite. Mom and Dad always looked at you like you were the problem. I was the one they trusted. The one they believed could fix things. Fix things? You're the one who made everything worse. His lips curled into a bitter smile. Maybe, but I did what I had to. I covered for them. I kept the money flowing. I kept us afloat. I laughed bitter and hollow. You call siphoning money from me keeping us afloat? You were just protecting yourself. Maybe, but I didn't want the family to fall apart. You think I liked playing the bad guy? No, but someone had to do it. I stared at him, my mind racing. If Eric was the one holding everything together by dirty means, then what was I? The outsider? The fool? And what about the emails with Brenda? Cleaning up paper trails? That sounds more like hiding evidence than saving the family. Eric hesitated. She's a good lawyer. She helped us navigate the mess. You don't know everything, Jake. Then tell me. Tell me everything. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Eric's voice dropped to a whisper. Dad wasn't just under investigation for fraud. He was involved with some dangerous people. People who didn't just want money. They wanted control. Control? Of what? The family business. The land. The assets. Dad got mixed up with a group that runs things behind the scenes. When they realized he might flip, they pressured him hard. So what? They forced him to turn the house over? To sideline me? Eric looked away. It wasn't just pressure. Dad was scared. He thought if he played along, maybe they'd leave the rest of us alone. My chest tightened. And you? Were you part of this? He laughed. A cold, hollow sound. I didn't want any of it. But when the threats started coming, when I saw what they were capable of, I made choices. I protected myself. And yeah, maybe I used you as a pawn. I stepped back, feeling the room close in. You're a coward. Eric shrugged. Call it what you want. But at least I'm still standing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then I pulled out my phone. I recorded this conversation. He raised an eyebrow. Good luck using it. No one will believe you. Maybe, but I'm done being silent. I turned to leave. At the door, Eric called after me. Jake, watch your back. You don't know who you're messing with. I didn't look back. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. I felt numb. I thought I was fighting my family. But now I realized I was fighting something much bigger, something darker. That night, I stayed up scrolling through the court documents, the emails, the hints Brenda and Eric dropped. The family I'd loved had secrets buried deeper than I imagined. And somewhere in all that darkness, the truth was waiting. The morning after my confrontation with Eric, I woke up feeling like I had just been pulled out of a nightmare. But the nightmare was real, and it wasn't over yet. The weight of Eric's words hung heavy in the air. Dangerous people, threats, hidden alliances. I realized my family wasn't just dysfunctional. They were trapped in something far more sinister. I didn't know who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear. I couldn't run away from this. I had to face it head on. I started by digging through every scrap of information I had. Emails, bank statements, texts, anything that could link my parents and Eric to those shadowy people Eric mentioned. Hours turned into days. The more I uncovered, the darker the story became. There were payments, large, unexplained transfers going to accounts I didn't recognize. Contracts signed by my father that I'd never seen. Threatening messages my mother had deleted from her phone. And then, buried in the files, I found a letter, addressed to me. It was from my father. Handwritten. It read, Jake. I never wanted you to find this. I wanted to protect you. But the truth is, I made terrible mistakes. I got involved with people who promised to save us but only dragged us deeper into the mess. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I always loved you, even if it didn't feel like it. If you read this, it means I'm gone. Please take care of your mother and Eric. And please, don't trust anyone completely. The letter crushed me. My father, who I'd felt betrayed by, was himself a victim. And now I was left with a family fractured beyond repair. That evening, I got a call from Brenda. Her voice was steady but urgent. Jake, I've been looking into those accounts. They link to a man named Donovan. He's a local businessman with ties to organized crime. Your family was involved in a deal with him. How deep? Deep enough that your parents and Eric were under serious pressure. But there's more. Donovan's interest was not just financial. He wanted control over your family's land and assets. So it wasn't just greed. It was power. Exactly. The next day, I arranged to meet Donovan. I wasn't sure if it was brave or foolish, but I needed to hear the truth from the source. When I walked into his office, I expected a hardened criminal. But instead, I found a man who looked tired, resigned. He looked me in the eye. Your family came to me desperate. They wanted protection, but there's always a price. What price? Control. Your father agreed to sign over key assets. Eric was supposed to be my inside man, to keep everything running smoothly. But when the investigation started, things got messy. So Eric betrayed his own family? Not exactly. He was trying to keep them alive. His words hit me like a punch. Maybe Eric wasn't just selfish. Maybe he was scared, trying to protect what little remained. That night, I sat alone, thinking about everything. The lies, the betrayal, the love twisted with fear. I realized this wasn't just about me or Eric or my parents. It was about survival. I decided to send one last message to my family. Not to argue, not to fight, but to say goodbye on my terms. I wrote, I forgive you. Not because you deserved it, but because I deserve peace. I'm done being your crutch and your battlefield. I'm done being the family's secret keeper. I'm choosing myself now. I hit send. Months passed. I rebuilt my life on my own terms. I cut ties with toxic demands and replaced them with true friends. People who valued me for me. And slowly I found peace. But the biggest surprise came months later. One afternoon, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a set of old family photos with a note, for you from your mother. We're sorry. We're trying to fix this. The healing had begun, not from forced loyalty, but from honest reflection. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the strongest freedom. And sometimes, family isn't about perfect loyalty. It's about choosing yourself and still leaving space for forgiveness.